To speed or not to speed? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to face the layers and washes of outrageous acrylics, or take up speed paint against a sea of grey, and in so opposing, reduce my pile of shame. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what Shakespeare was working on there. How to address your painting needs. Also, poor Yorick here. The real tragedy is he never had a fully painted army. Shame. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Glacial Geek video. I am Phil, the Glacial Geek, and today I am coming to you with a topic that I think is on the minds of a lot of us, that we are, when we are painting. We look at these tutorials, we look at these clips and these videos and these pictures on Instagram, and we look at our armies, and we look at the armies that are at the tournaments that we go to. We look at our friends' armies. We look at the pile of gray that exists in our realm, in our world, and we sit there and we wonder, what do we do about this? How do we start addressing the big, gray gorilla in the room, which is the gray tide? How do we get our armies to be fully painted? What should we do for the fully painting? And what do we want out of it? And the true answer to this is that there is no exact answer. What I am going to hopefully talk about here and kind of demonstrate and show is that there's a whole range of options that you can address, and that every single one of the tools that I'm going to talk about are exactly that. They are tools towards getting you painted models. And what you want out of them is going to determine how you are going to go forward with the process. So, the two main ways of painting that there are, there's other things that you can get into, are essentially your traditional acrylics, and the new people, I know there are people out there that say this isn't super new, but it's really new. It is pretty new. Is the use of speed paints. So, or the contrast, whatever it is that you're using. Speed paints, contrast, the one coat kind of deal here. And I know there's a lot of people say it's like, oh, it's not a new process, it's not a new thing, it's just heavy washes, it's just inks. And it's like, maybe. But honestly, the formulation for these things, like the speed paints, they're designed to raise from the edges. They're designed to still leave a strong tint over the main surface, and they are designed to collect into the recesses to give you the highlight, base, and shadow and dimension that you want from a whole process of painting in one coat. And that's what they're looking to do with these. And that's not what washes are intended for. That's not what inks are intended for. And honestly, the new style of paints do it much better. And they're also available in a far wider range of color options than the washes, because they're designed to be used to color the model, not just create a shadow in the model. And because of that, there's just innately they're going to have a wider range of them. So whether people have been doing similar things in the past with other materials is kind of irrelevant. This is a new form of painting that has come up. So there's a lot of, because it's new, because it seems simpler, a lot of people have some misgivings about it. But the thing that I want you all to remember, regardless of which direction you choose, because the direction is up to you and depends upon what you want to be doing and what you're looking for, is that none of this is cheating. I know Vince Venturella has that whole series about hobby cheats, and it's tongue-in-cheek, and it's meant to show that there is nothing innately wrong about using a tool or using a method to achieve what you want, even if it's not the longest, hardest, most difficult method to do so, even if it seems like it's a quick and easy route out of it. Because at the end of the day, there's no reason why it should be hard. This isn't meant to be like some Sisyphean task that you are being burdened with. that you have to paint all of these. The whole idea is that you want to paint them. You want them painted, and you want to achieve a painted army, a painted model, whatever it is. And the ways that you get there is entirely up to you. So with that out there, now we just look at the differences between them and kind of what to expect when you approach a model with the two different methods. So most of the models that you're going to see at a competition level, the ones that are going to go be, achieving for Golden Demon, or that are going to be going for any kind of like contest really, are usually going to be painted in the traditional acrylic method. They're the ones that you're going to have, you have your prime, you have your base coat, you have your some way of finding a way to give you dimension by their washes or black lining or something like that. And then you have layers and blending and highlights and all of these different methods. It's a long process. It can be a very exact process, and it's a process that takes a lot of skill to perfect. And that's why the people who are going for like the Slayer Sword, who are going for the Golden Demon, going for these competition level painters, like Sam Lenz, a fellow factory team member, they have put in a lot of work and a lot of effort into honing their abilities to control the paints, to do this kind of work, to create what it is that they want to create with acrylics. And that's kind of been the traditional method of painting, and that method has changed over the years, like from the advent of washes. Previously you just kind of put paint onto a model and it was covered and it was colored and you're good to go. And then they came out with washes to give you some dimension, and then they've come up with non-metallic metals. They've come up with wet blending and feathering and all these different methods of utilizing a paint, acrylic paint. I guess you could use, like an enamel paint, but at this point, if you're painting models, I wouldn't. The fact is that acrylics have come so far and they're so good that, like, why not just use them in an easier method that you can just wash with water versus having to use like a thinner or something like that to wash your brushes and kill them. So typically you're talking about acrylics, and you've got metallics, and you've got all the special effects acrylics and things like that allow you to create and expand and look for more stuff. And that's traditionally what model painting is. Now with SpeedPaints, there's a way to get a good looking finished product very quickly with like one coat of paint, and it will look good. And it will look good on the table. It'll look good in your hand. It'll look good when you're showing your friends. It's something that you can be proud of. This isn't just like a lesser form of it, but you're probably not going to be competing for Golden Demon if all you did was SpeedPaints. But then again, if you're not looking to compete for Golden Demon, then why do you care? And that's the crux of it, is that, do you care? And if you care, then that determines one thing. And if you don't care, that might determine another thing. There are people out there, there's a lot of people out there, most of us, I would imagine, are trying to get models painted to be on the tabletop, that are trying to be for the game that we have Saturday, the tournament that we have this weekend, that are trying to get models painted to just go to the game store on Thursday night with our friends, and you want to look cool on the table because you've just got this new unit, and we want to just get them painted so we can put them out there. Whether you refuse to play with gray models, so you have to get them painted in order to play with them, or whether you just have been playing with your gray models and you want them to look cooler because your friends always come with cool looking models. Either which way, the intent behind you painting them is not to win an award. It's not to impress judges. What you are trying to do is try to get models painted so they can be on the tabletop for whatever the purpose is that you're looking for. And I think that's the majority of people out there that are looking to do these things. With that in mind, SpeedPaints can be an incredible tool towards achieving that, and have a very good effect, and have a very good finished product. So what I want to show you now is a couple of my models that I've painted with just using like the traditional acrylic set with layers and washes and all that. I'm going to show you some that are just SpeedPaint that I was using to get done fast, but I'm still very proud of and I'm very happy to show you. And then I'm going to show you some that are kind of like a mixture of both. And honestly, depending upon what you're looking to do, that method is probably going to be super effective and helpful for you. And then there's other ways that you can use the same tools, the speed paints and things like that, in your traditional acrylic process. And I'll show you some of those as well. I want you to look at these, and I want you to look at the models, and I will tell you off the bat that no model I'm going to show you am I embarrassed of. I'm very proud of every single one of them. I like them. They look great to me, and they represent my level of painting. I'm not Sam Lenz. I'm not going to be gunning for Golden Demon. I do want to push myself. I do want to try more, and I'm probably going to try more of the acrylic, just basic acrylic painting in order to push myself with my painting. But that then becomes my goal. Most of the time, I'm painting models to get them on the tabletop for a tournament, to get them on the tabletop for a game, for a battle report, for whatever it is. I want to paint my models because I want them to be part of my painted armies that I can use in game. So, with all that said, let's take a look at some of these models. So this here is my Tech Marine. I'm very happy with how he turned out, and I used the traditional kind of model for painting. So I painted him with a base coat, I put on a wash, and then I used layering effects to get a brighter armor while keeping the recess look there. I've also used true metallics to get some of the metal parts there, and I used the traditional system of painting with it, the traditional quote-unquote system of painting here to get the effect that I have on this, and I'm proud of it. I like how it turned out. I think he looks great, and I'm very happy with the paint job. It did take a fair amount of work and a fair amount of effort to get this effect. I worked on trying to get the shadows. I probably could have gone higher on the highlights if I was really trying to push it, but again, I was painting this to get it on the tabletop, and I was happy with how he looked. And when I'm making something for the tabletop, I'm not too worried about the highlights because most of the time you're looking at it with a directional light, and you don't have to really worry about really upping those highlights because the natural light that you're playing under, either the light over the table that you're playing on, the light coming through a window, whatever it is, that directional light will give you dimension, that will give you the natural highlight while you're looking at this model to give you the effect that you would have to paint on if you're trying to take like a flat light photo of this models for Instagram or competition or whatever it is. So when I worked on this, it was a fair amount of work, but it came out really well, and I was very happy with how it turned out. But again, it took a fair amount of work to get there. And this is the one process that we could do. Now, this is an Accursed Cultist who was done almost entirely with SpeedPaint. Even the base, I had a texture there that I had white, and then I put it on there. When I paint with SpeedPaints, I do it with a base white, just a prime of white, and then I go at it with the SpeedPaints. I don't worry about slap chop. To me, the effects that the paints give are good enough. I don't need that zenithal highlighting in order for the SpeedPaints to really do what I want them to do. I'm not interested in getting any deeper shadows with my SpeedPaint models because of the prime with a zenithal. I'd much rather just focus on painting the paints themselves. So this model was almost entirely done with SpeedPaints. There's a few little details that I did with acrylics after I had done the SpeedPaints, but most of it is just acrylics. So or just the SpeedPaints. So I washed them, I blended some of the SpeedPaints there, and I just chose the different colors. And I'm just careful when I'm painting them on that I don't have to like get them into areas that I don't want them to. You can see that you can be pretty exact there. I've got a bunch of different tones that are right next to each other, and as long as you're just careful with the way you're applying them, you don't have to worry about it being sloppy. And you don't have to just slap it on there. You can be careful with your application. You can try it thicker, or you can try it thinner. You can have a little bit of control, and you can have a model that is just done with SpeedPaints that looks really cool that you can be very proud of. I'm very proud of this model. I would put this model up against my Tech Marine, even though it took far less time to paint, even though it's a similarly sized model there. Far less time to paint. I got an effect and a look that is very good. And it really does what I want it to do, which is look cool for me to show to my opponent, to put on the tabletop, play with, and be proud of. And that's what I'm looking for when I do these models, when I work with the SpeedPaints. And just the practice that you can get with any of these things, you can start to get the effects that you want just by working with them over time. And honestly, just getting hands on paint and paint on models is the best way to learn how to do any of these processes, whether you're doing the acrylics, whether you're doing the SpeedPaints, whatever it is that you're doing. They become important for you to, in order to achieve what it is that you're looking to achieve. But you can see the difference in model, the difference in final product between the acrylics and the SpeedPaint. For someone of my skill, someone who's doing what I'm doing to try to achieve what I'm doing, is relatively minimal. And you can achieve very good looking models to do what you want them to do, which is to look good on the tabletop with far less time because of using speed paints. And if what you're looking to do is get models fast on there, then speed paint becomes like a very strong option for you to utilize. And the third model I would like to show off to show you a combination of the two is my Blade Guard Veteran painted up as one of the Risen. So when in my mind, this is like when the Dark Angels were being, the fallen, quote unquote, were being brought back in by the Lion into the fold of the Dark Angels. In my mind, I know they've come out now with the Inner Circle Companions, and it's kind of like a bit more wishy-washy, but to me, it was kind of like they were welcoming them back into the fold. They were becoming part of these units that were going out there, but they were still, you know, in my mind, it would be kind of cool to mark them out as the Risen with their traditional old school color palette that they had back in the Heresy era with the Dark Angels here. But this model was painted with a combination of the two. So you see the armor there is entirely speed paint. So I got that dimensional black look of the armor using the speed paint, just the grim black speed paint from the Army Painter there. And it gave an awesome looking dimension. And it's one of my favorites. All of my Black Legion are done with the same armor, the same black over just a white prime. It gives a very dimensional, very deep. It reads as black, but still has the dimension, which is very hard to achieve. And it's honestly like very, very difficult to achieve with acrylics. Previously, when I would do it, I would have to prime black, do 2 different forms of dry brush onto it, and then wash the crap out of it to bring it back down in order to achieve any kind of dimensional look on them. And that's what I used to do with my Death Watch. But now I can achieve that same look, that same kind of feel to it, that same dimensional black that reads black and does not read gray with just a speed paint, with just the coat of the speed paint. So I was able to get this model painted up fast. I was doing this one to try to get it done for the narrative back that I went to back in November when I was bringing my Dark Angels for it, and I wanted to paint them up. And I spent a lot of time working on it, and or not a lot of time working, as I didn't have a lot of time. So I had the dimensional paint there. I also used the speed paint to get that same kind of look on that like cloth that he's using to wipe off his sword. But then I went back into it with the acrylics from the Fanatic range here to do the checker pattern on the shoulder there, to do some of the details, to do any of the metallics. All of that was with working with the acrylics, and then I washed those acrylics that I needed to as I went along. So this whole model is a combination of speed paints and acrylics to achieve the look that I was looking for and to achieve what I wanted to do. And I love it. I love how he turned out. He's possibly one of my favorite models that I've ever painted, and he did not take a super long time to get there. And you can see him compared to the other two. You can see the effect that just adding a little bit extra with the acrylics can really punch it up, really give you some more control. Getting that like checkered pattern would be nigh impossible with just speed paints. That's when acrylics really come into their own, when you can have like a lot more fine control, because you need the more fine control when you're doing things like that versus the speed paints, which are kind of giving you more of a general sense of what you're going there. But you can see the combination of using them there. You can see the effect that you have, and you can see the final product is a very cool model, and I'm very happy with the result there, combining the two. Do I like any of these better than the others? Honestly, maybe the last one. Maybe this guy here with the, you know, with my Risen here, just because he turned out awesome there. But honestly, I'm very pleased and very happy and very proud of all 3 of them, and they all use different forms of painting with the model. And last, I want to show off my Goth Rocker. I'm super proud of this one. I have an entire video where I painted him, and I did him for Orktober back in October. And this was primarily just using acrylic paints to paint him up there. But I utilized the speed paints as a very saturated wash, or like a way to punch up the saturation on models once I got more of a gradient that I wanted with different forms of utilizing the acrylic paint here. So this is just to show off kind of what you can do and what you can achieve when you are painting models using the tool of the speed paint, even if you've decided that you want to do acrylic the acrylic painting method. You can still utilize the tool of the speed paints to get a cool looking model, to help you punch in the color, to help you get more saturation, to kind of work in a darker shadow while not losing any of the saturation that would normally get lost if you just kind of mixed in a dark color in there, because it's just like they're all very highly saturated, and it allows you to really get that color pop that you want while darkening things down and get a really cool effect from there. So I just wanted to show off kind of that the tool of speed paint isn't to just be afraid of if you decided to go acrylics, and that it means that you will never ever use it. It's just a way to utilize the speed paints in a way that is not just to get the color that you want as the basic model. So there we go. We've got all different representations of the different painting there. You've got your acrylic painting, you've got your speed paint, you've got your mix of the two, and you've got your primarily one, but utilizing the other to help as a tool to enhance what you're doing. And at the end of the day, I'm proud of all of these models. I like all of them. I think they all look rad, and I would be very happy for any of them to represent me as a painter out there in the scene. But the question is for you, what is it that you should do? Should you speed paint your army? Should you go in with acrylics and like spend your time to do wet blending and edge highlighting and all the different methods, non-metallic metals? The answer is that I can't answer that question for you. You have to answer that question. But I just wanted to show you what it is that you are actually thinking about and what you should be thinking about when you are embarking upon answering that question for yourself. If you want to get it in there fast and you're not super concerned about it looking like an award-winning final product and you're just on a time deadline, then speed paints are definitely your friend. If you are thinking about pushing your painting and you want to increase your brush control and your skills and you want to try out different methods of painting and your goal is to become a better miniature painter and your goal is to possibly one day compete into competitions, then yes, you should probably lean into the more traditional acrylic method, because you have more control, you have more ways of working with it, that you will create the models that you want to create and you can get the effects that you want to create. Most of the people that are out there doing like competition painting are now utilizing all of the different tools. I know Sam uses the speed paints as a really good way to punch up his colors, as a way to get have more of a range of colors to work in to get the specific kind of shading that he wants instead of just using a wash. And he utilizes all of these as tools that he wants to utilize for everything that he's doing. And that's what it should be. It should be a tool for you to choose. You don't have to make it like a 100% one way or 100% the other way. Like I've shown, I do both. I do everything because I enjoy painting as a painting project. I also want to get models done and painted so that I can have them on the tabletop when I want to go and play a game, a tournament, or at a battle report. So when I'm sitting down and I go, what was my goal with this model? Specifically in each model, when I go into each painting project, what is my goal? What is it that I want to do? And I will then choose the tools that will help me get there. Honestly, I'm probably, especially not if I'm not going for any kind of competition painting, I don't think I will ever just use the acrylic method to paint black armor ever again. The process that I used to do, I was happy with, but it took a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it wasn't like super controllable. I had issues with it I would have to kind of work with. I have had zero problem getting black armor looking rad with the Grim Black speed paint. So going forward, if I'm painting a model for an army that's being used on the battlefield and that's being used here, I'm probably always going to go with the black speed paint because that's gotten me the best results out of anything I've ever tried. So I've made my decision in that case for me, and that's what works for me. If I'm doing like some fleshy stuff, if I want to have like cool like gradients along like a fleshy arm or against like a very textured surface, speed paints are going to get me an effect far better than I've ever had success with acrylics. And I know that. And if I'm going for a gaming piece, I'm probably going to lean into the speed paints for that. But if I want to really push and want to make like a centerpiece model, like my Lionel Johnson that I painted up, all of that is probably going to change my decision-making process. I might use some airbrush paints to try to get some cool, gradients with the airbrush and then go in with a brush with acrylics in there. I might also use speed paints. I've had it where I've used the airbrush to get some cool gradients, to get some cool highlights, and then I go in with a speed paint over top to give me just like an extra punch of color. And that's worked really well, especially when painting vehicles. It's sometimes hard to get like really dramatic highlights and not have them like look off. So what I've learned is that if I over push the highlights and get a cool like dimensional look on my arm, on my vehicles, I can then go over it with speed paint through the airbrush, and I get a cool pop of color, and it looks rad that way. And just working with the tools to achieve what it is that I want to achieve, and I can get uniformity across an army, or I can get a cool looking centerpiece model, whatever it is that I want to do. That's what I can do. And it's all about figuring out what works for you. And those are the questions you need to make. The question shouldn't be like, oh, should I be cheating with speed paint, or should I have like to do the work that I'm supposed to do? There is no supposed to. There is absolutely no supposed to when it comes to this hobby, because this is a hobby. This is a way for you to enjoy your life. This is a way for you to de-stress. This is a way for you to be happy. And the answer needs to be, what is going to have me be happier? Is having a fully painted army going to make me happier than having an award-winning painted model? Because honestly, some of the models that Sam paints, I can paint an army in that time because of what I'm looking for. And I'm going to be happy with my painted army. He's going to be happy with his award-winning model. And at the end of the day, that's what the trade-off becomes. And it's not even a trade-off, because we're both getting what we want. We're both happy with it, and we both have models that we're pleased with. And you need to ask yourself that question. And you have to be honest about that question. And there is no supposed to, and there's no one else that can tell you what it is that you want. If you are not looking to become like an award-winning painter, then there's no reason to learn non-metallic metals. Just plain and simple. Because non-metallic metals are honestly going to look best if you're making a display model, if you are making a model for a competition, because they look best from a certain angle. Sure, you have some of like the greatest painters out there can make non-metallic metals that look good from lots of different angles, but it doesn't necessarily read that way. And I think that a lot of the times when you paint these models, if you're painting them for the tabletop, if you're painting them for gaming pieces, then some of the higher end systems that they have there aren't going to give you a model that you're going to be happy with on the tabletop, because you're going to be looking at it from behind and you're like, well, this is just like I've got them on the table and they're moving across the table and I'm looking at them from behind, and this is where I gave that dramatic shadow look to it. And that looks great when you're holding your hand and you're just kind of like twisting it around and you've got it up on display on your shelf, or you've got it like a judge is looking at it in competition. It looks great. But on the tabletop, you're looking at an army of just like shadow. And that's maybe not as fun to watch. And you're painting these models for you as much as anyone else. So paint the models the way that you're going to be able to enjoy them. Paint the models that are going to give you the best amount of joy. And just understand that there is that whole gambit that you can choose as an individual hobbyist without having to worry about what you shoulda, coulda, woulda done. Just paint the models the way you are going to be happiest with. And be honest with yourself. And don't think that you have to choose a different way to please the painting gods of some way, because there is no pleasing the painting gods. They're just a fickle bunch of jerks. So you're always going to have people that are like, oh, you should have done this, or you should have done that. Or it's like, oh, well, you don't have a fully painted army because you spent 900 hours painting up your centerpiece model. Which, if you're super happy to have like a really cool looking centerpiece and you've got a whole bunch of Horde of Grave playing with them on the tabletop, bully, do it. That sounds great. That sounds rad. I would love to see your centerpiece model there. And then if you're just playing with your friends, if you're just playing in whatever, that's fine. Sure, you might lose points if you're going to an actual tournament with them, but whatever. That's the decision-making process that you go through to find out what's going to make you happy. What is going to make you happy is the only question you have to answer when choosing what to do with this. So let me know down below what it is that you do. Do you go through the process of painting up everything with acrylics? Do you use the speed paints? Do you use a combination? Do you have other ways that have sped up the process for you that you get a model that you're happy with? Let me know down below and your thoughts on this process. And let me know if you've been having this kind of like question in your mind as well about what it is that you're supposed to do. Because, I think we all have that question. We all wonder what we're supposed to do. And we all sit there going like, ooh, maybe I should try doing this process. Maybe I should try doing that process. And it's like, yeah, those are all questions that we all are going to ask. But let me know what the process has been for you. So, I hope you guys have all enjoyed this. I certainly have. I have been Phil, the Glacial Geek as always. And until next time, stay safe and have fun.